Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Powerful Man Show. I'm your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host and the man that's back again, Matt Jennings. Matt, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. Good to be here.
Good. Well, we just recorded the intro to Who is Matt and his journey, which was a fantastic conversation, Matt. You dropped a lot of knowledge there. So, guys, if you haven't heard that yet, go back and listen to that episode. Go ahead and pause this one. You'll get a lot from this, I hope, anyway. Although Matt and I are just kind of free flow here. But go back and listen to Matt's story because it is so relatable, and your journey and how much you contribute to men by giving back is truly astonishing. So thanks for being back.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
to be back.
Well, let's jump right into it. So the topic that I'm going to throw on the table here that we talked about, or you brought up a little bit or alluded to in your previous episode was, why is it so difficult to lead your family or to show up vulnerably in your house, right? With the ones you love. And that was a topic we brought up, and a lot of guys face this, right? So I'll set the scene a little bit here, Matt, and then I'll give you my 2 cents for what it's worth. Is a lot of guys, you go to work, and most of the guys that listen to the show are business leaders. You go to work and you lead your team, you lead your staff, you set the vision, you decide where you're going to go, OKRs, KPIs, whatever it may be. You're rocking and rolling. You get on a sales call, you knock it out of the park. Your confidence on a scale of 1 to 10 is a 50, right? And you're just crushing stuff left and right. But you get home.
Then you get home.
And it's different. So why is that, right? And we take a back seat at home, and we let things go, which we know cognitively, especially since you've been through the program, the other side of that. But why is it so difficult? So that's a question a lot of guys want to know is why can't I show up there? Or my wife is giving me pushback. My kids are giving me pushback. And for some reason, I just can't show up that powerfully at home. And the reason that happens for most men is because they care. Right? It's not
Because I go home and do this, right?
Yeah, they're always in their cell phone. But the reason it is because you care, right? You care about the rejection. I get on a sales call, and I'm calling Matt, I'm calling his company, and Matt and I don't know each other from Adam, and Matt rejects me. Forget about it, right? No big deal. I'll move on to the next call. I'll move on to the next thing. Matt doesn't know me, all these stories I can make up and discount it. However, if I go home, my wife rejects me, or my kids reject me, they're rejecting me, and I love them, right? And so that hits me in the heart, and that hits me someplace that's soft, and they're really getting me. They're not going after what I call your representative, the person, the face and the facade that you put out there to the world. And this is what Tim does so well. Tim's just like, this is just me. There's no difference. You meet Tim in person, it's the same Tim you see online. It's the same Tim everywhere. It's the same guy. But for most of us, we're warriors conquering, or we're out there just conquering like kings in our business. When we go home, it gets tougher because it matters. It matters to us in such a deeper level, because again, your wife rejects you, your kids reject you, you love them, and they're going to be around. They're going to be there tomorrow. You're hoping, right? You're worried maybe a little bit, but they're not. Right. And that's where the fear comes in. Your COO leaves. That sucks. You hope he or she stays, but you'll find another one.
Right.
Your kids leave. That's another ball game.
Yep. Wife, different ball game.
Yep. So we were talking about the math. So that's my theory on why it's such a difference. Is there's more at stake. You got more on the table at home, and men tend to tread a lot lighter. And society's told us to do that as well. And kind of a modern society as the power has shifted at home for a lot of couples coming through. A lot of men just don't know kind of where their place is there. And, they decide to just be the good boy, so to speak, be the good guy. I'm just going to be the good guy. I'm not going to ruffle any feathers. I'm just going to, I'll take out the trash dutifully, and I'll do all these other things. But what ends up happening is resentment starts to build up little by little.
Yeah.
It could be on either side, but it tends to be resentment. And on the other side of resentment, the problem is you get that distance. And when there's resentment, we call in relationship coaching. I'm doing a whole course, Matt, for the guys in the Brotherhood on mastering sexuality, right? Which guys are excited about because, hey, who doesn't want to be better? But one of the things we talk about in relationships is, imagine like there's a glass wall between us right now. So Matt, you and I are in a relation to each other, right? There's a glass wall. So every time I have resentment towards you, or if I don't say anything about to you that's on my mind or my heart, there's a little bit of mud or dirt that gets put on that glass wall, right? And it's a speckle here and there. And that's not that big of a deal. I can still see you. It's all good. But over time, speckles start to add up. That dirt starts to get dirtier and dirtier. And if you're driving your truck through the mud and the dirt all the time, eventually, if you don't clean that glass, you can't see. And what happens with a lot of couples and their kids is that glass gets dirt and that resentment builds up over time, and you can't see each other.
Yeah.
And you can't see yourself.
Yeah.
And that's where it all starts to matter. But you still care, you still love the person, and that's where it becomes really hard to lead a home.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's really different I guess I could give you my perspective on both kids and, husband and wife, but I think it's totally different for the two. But, I think the most important thing that children need to feel loved, because I think one of the most important things for a child is to feel loved. Little boys need to feel some respect. But and we'll get into that, because I think men need to be respected, women need to be loved is our greatest need, generally speaking. But with kids, I think it's boundaries. Like if I could go back and do some things different with my kids, I would set probably tighter boundaries when they were younger, more reinforced. I'm still not a big disciplinarian, and I'm not promoting that someone be just like a iron fist disciplinarian. That's not what I'm saying. But I believe that it's kind of like the upside down pyramid, right? If you start with your boundaries tight when they're young and you enforce them pretty tight, then as they get older and more mature and can handle more freedom, you can give it to them and they will stay within those boundaries. And to a child, having clearly defined boundaries defines love in their life, I believe. Okay. You want a child to feel loved, let them have boundaries. You want to feel them, make them feel unloved, let them go wild and don't give them boundaries and be their buddy, right? Like nothing wrong with being their buddy. You want them to be your buddy and you want to be their friend. I'm not saying that there's not this friendly type relationship, but if you don't have boundaries there as a father, I believe that your child eventually will feel unloved if you don't have those boundaries. And I think kids intentionally cross those boundaries at times so they can feel the love of a parent.
Yeah.
Who brings them back into the boundary, right? And they need to know where those are at. So I think that's the key in parenting, and I sucked at it for a long time. I feel like I do better now. My kids are 18 and 21 now. My son and I started a business together when he was a senior in high school. He was into fish. He loves to fish. So we started a fishing lure company. And in his first full year, he sold over $1 million, $4 at a time. And he's in every major retailer in America, and he's grown a phenomenal business with it at 21 years old. But that business was a huge barrier between he and I. In its like second, third year there. He was still just a kid, had tons of popularity, notoriety, 70,000 Facebook followers watching him. I'm a hardcore business-driven person. I wanted to capitalize on the opportunity that he had in front of him. And he really just wanted to go fishing. He's 18 years old. And I was wrong in how I pushed that. And I now have backed off and just letting him do it. He got married a month or so ago. His business is growing this year, even through the COVID, and I'm completely staying out of it and letting him run it. and he's doing a phenomenal job. And actually, when I came back from the reset is when I told him, I'm stepping back and going to trust you and let you have it. So that goes along with the upside down pyramid. As they get older, you got to give them more freedom, and you got to trust them and let them do their thing. And I kind of tried to rein him in too much at an older age. So that's kind of my theory on the kids. On the husband and wife, I believe that every woman's greatest need is love. Every man's greatest need is respect. And I think that our marriages run in cycles. And when we get married, we're here, right? And I know some guys can't see this, but my hands are together. So we're right here together. We're face to face. We're madly in love. And then all of a sudden, one day, let's say, this is Matt and Kelly, the husband and wife. And one day Matt does something, says something, whatever, that hurts Kelly's feelings and really kind of makes her feel unloved, right? As a woman. So she steps back. Well, when I see her do that, and I'm like, well, why is she stepping away from me? That feels kind of disrespectful that she would step back away from me. So I do this. When she feels unloved again, so she does this, then I feel disrespected and I do this. And if you're not careful, typically it's like this, then you're back, and then it gets a little further and you're back. And then all of a sudden one day you find yourself, you're on the East Coast and she's on the West Coast, and we kind of did that at a period in our life 15 years ago. And we just found ourselves like we had grown apart through this. Okay, so that's like the cycle of retaliation, where you're retaliating, you're robbing her of love because she's not respecting you. She's robbing you of respect because you're not loving her. And what I believe it takes to end that cycle is for one of the two to step forward and show love or show respect, even when the other one is not, right?
Yeah.
Break the cycle of retaliation by pushing into the cycle of rejuvenation.
Yeah.
And so I have tried to consciously in my marriage, when I sense that she's stepping back, I try consciously to step forward.
Yes.
And he does the same, right? Like, because we've talked about it, she does the same. And when you have two people in a marriage that are doing that, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It solves all problems. It really does. If you're, and honestly, I believe that a marriage in many ways is a submission competition. It's a race to the back of the line. It's not, and it has to be done on both sides. It can't be lopsided and one-sided, and it never should be. And you shouldn't live in a relationship that's like that, which is a whole nother topic of how to get through that. But, marriage is just it's the most beautiful thing, greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And I think it's that way with every man and woman who have the right kind of relationship. And for me, I've been married 25 years this year. So got married when she was 16. I was 20. I made $200 a week working for my dad, and she worked at Kroger part-time and made about $40 or $50 a week. And here we are years later and have, several successful businesses, 2 kids, and we've made it through all that time together. And to me, it's all about just constantly being conscious and paying attention and recognizing what your spouse's needs are and meeting them, and them recognizing what your needs are and meeting them. And it takes a lot of communication to get there.
Oh, yeah.
And communication's usually where the problem is.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times what happens is what you were talking about is, as one person steps back, the other person does as well. They create a story, right? A rejection or whatever it is.
Right.
So when the woman's not feeling love, a lot of times that's fear, right? She's scared. She's scared you're going to leave. She's scared of something you're going to do. And that triggers a reaction in the guy, right? Of whatever reaction he is going through, rejection, disrespectful, disrespected, as you said. And one of the tricks to getting back there, guys, is do the opposite. So if you know that she's scared, like she's in fear, then you become protective, right? A protector, right? Give her that space. And that's, we talk about it to women would say, well, I want you to pull me in, right? Kind of like I don't want it to sound condescending, but kind of like kids, right? Your kid's throwing a fit, right? They're having a bad day. They're throwing a fit. They don't want anything to do with you. If you grab them, pull them in, and just hold them, and just love them, but as a man, as a father, just hold them. They will release and let go and surrender into you, right? And that's what they need. They're really screaming for love, like you said with kids. They're screaming for that attention. Well, your wife's the same way, right? She wants you to pull her in. Show her that she's important and you are her man. And no matter how crazy she gets, you're going to be there steadfast. So
That's
Matt,
hard to do. That's hard to do sometimes when you're mad or frustrated. It's not our natural tendency. And, one of the things I've, kind of implied in my life, I didn't read this in a book. I just kind of came up with it on my own, I'm sure. But I feel like that, of course, as we've said before, I'm a faith-based guy. And I feel like when you become married, the two become one. And I try to tell myself at times when my tendency is to try to say something that would hurt or retaliate or whatever against my wife, I really try to live under the mentality that if I hurt her, I'm hurting myself. And I try to live that way every day. And when I'm tempted to, and I still do, I still bark and bicker, and you never get completely away from that. But I'm pretty quick to apologize now, and either before I do it or immediately after, I usually stop and I think, if I'm hurting her, I'm hurting myself, because she's me and I'm her, and we're one, we're a unit, and I found that keeping that at the top of my head has been really helpful to me, because I can be a little bit grouchy, believe it or not.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. And she can be too. Believe it or not, she can be too. As pretty as she is and that smile, she can be grouchy too. Like, I think that's one of the keys in relationships too. And it's honestly something Kelly, she'll probably end up hearing this, and she'll probably get on to me for saying it, but it's one of the things that she struggled with early in our relationship was unrealistic expectations. And, you see two people walking in the park and holding hands, for a woman, that's what they see, right? And the kids are playing and everybody's happy. And why isn't their life that way? Well, you caught those people at 1 hour of one moment of your life. And for us guys, I think our unrealistic expectations are probably a little more around our wife taking care of us, giving us sex anytime, any way we want it, and without us having to do any work to get there, right? And I don't know exactly what our expectation. I think everybody's is a little bit different. For me, I think one of my unrealistic expectations was I wanted to come home every night and my wife just have a big smile on her face, and my kids grab me by the legs, and everybody's so happy to see me because daddy worked all day, and, he provided our, this house and food, and we'd all sit down around the table and eat supper. And I grew up in a house where we did sit around a table and eat supper most every night, and we were most of the time really happy when dad came through the door. My house wasn't really like that for me. And that was kind of one of my pet peeves or unrealistic expectations is, sometimes life's just not like you picture it, all the time. And you have to be realistic in what you really expect, and grateful for the moments you do have. And that's where gratitude really comes in. Grateful for those moments that you do have. My family and I, we get together. We have a place on the lake here on Kentucky Lake, and we get together most every Sunday, and we ride boats and jet skis and play and inner tube and all that kind of stuff. And for me, it's almost like living the dream, right? But every day is not that way. And then we have the winter comes, and we don't get to do that for 6 months here in Kentucky because it's cold, and so I constantly try to remember back to those times and remind myself of those times when it seems like everything's not like that, and those times always come back around if you're patient and you make them happen, right? You got to consciously work to make them happen too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's so much there to unpack, Matt. And bringing it back to the idea of the table of like, why is it so hard to connect or lead at home? When you think about it, you come in with these expectations, guys, and you come in of the way it should be, right? Whenever you have an expectation of something, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? Because it's either going to go one way or the other. There's not like a possibility this could happen or an evolution here. And we can unpack how you can get around that with a relationship. Because I know, Matt, you got some good ideas on how to do that too. But it comes back to leading. You have this expectation of how it's going to be, and it doesn't play out that way. And you kind of feel a little bit, I guess, rejected or what have you at home. And as men, we start to fall into this, we really care and, you know, we want to be there. So we're not willing to risk it at that point with our families as much as we're willing to risk it in the workplace or someplace else, because it does matter so much. And then you step away a little bit because you don't want to risk it. You know, you want to keep the peace, or guys have all kinds of stories. Your wife feels it, so she's going to step away a little bit. What happens for a lot of men, I'm not you, Matt, but it happens for a lot of guys, is there needs to be polarization there, right? There needs to be a masculine and feminine. Now, in different roles, that's always juxtaposition, right? So sometimes a male strong man can be a little feminine in that characteristic. I know that's a negative connotation to some guys, but it happens. The woman then tends to say, okay, well, then I need to step up and lead a little bit, right? And so she's feeling a little less secure. And she needs to step in because she feels the man's hesitancy to lead, or his hesitancy to do it, whatever reason, maybe she doesn't know. And over time, those micro changes start to flip the script a little bit of what's happening, you know, and who's running the show in the home. And again, the man not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to, you know, upset the wife, the relationship, tends to hold it in. And again, you're putting a little bit more dirt on that glass, so to speak, coming through there. And that can cause problems over time, you know, and things work out. The guy tends to have this resentment build up, and then all of a sudden he explodes, you know, and has an episode that I know you and I can't relate to that at all, Matt, but
No, not at all. Not at all.
So it tends to explode, and then that causes a whole series of problems, and he finds himself trying to make it up. You know, it's a classic, goes out and gets flowers and, you know, the whole deal. But guys, we can avoid a lot of this in our relationships. But again, like you said, is having that courage to be vulnerable, to talk about what's really going on, and to have those conversations. And there's nothing wrong with having your wife have the keys sometimes, right, to the car, so to speak.
There's a marriage series done by a guy that I follow a lot named Andy Stanley. It's called What Happy Couples Know. And there's all kinds of good stuff in it. But in this, he has this box in front of him. It's basically like a clear aquarium, and he's putting like the house, the money, and it's all of our wants, dreams, and desires, right? That we've grown up and we've got it from seeing our parents, just like I saw my dad come in and all that. And we fill this box up our whole life full of these wants, needs, and desires. And then when we get married, we just hand it to the other person.
Yeah.
You know, this is what you're supposed to give me.
Yeah. But they can't open
that
it.
Box to that other person looks like expectations. To us, it's want, needs, and desires. For him, on the other side, it's expectations, and it causes real problems. And I guess one of the other things I learned through that has really been impactful in my marriage is he had like the 5 C's if you want to have a terrible marriage. I can't remember all of them, but I do remember one of them was compromise. So many times we're taught that marriage is about compromise, and compromising is absolutely the worst thing that you can do in your marriage. It's not about compromise. It's about everybody winning, right? Like it's both sides winning. It's compromise usually means somebody wins, somebody loses, or neither one of you really win. You just, nobody wins, right? But everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to be happy. And compromise, you may get through life and your marriage may survive till the end through compromise, but it won't be happy. It won't be good. And so, yeah, it's, learning to create a win-win situation in your marriage as opposed to both of you compromising something you really want is, I think, super important. the other thing that he said in there is you're not married to your marriage. Who you're married to has a name. And so many times we talk as men about, well, I'm going to do this for my marriage, or, I want to make my marriage work. I want to, I want to have a good marriage. And it's always like, no, that's, I want to make my life with Kelly work, right? It's more than a marriage. There's a person there. And when we try to relate to it as we're trying to save our marriage, no, we're trying to save a relationship with, in my case, Kelly, right? And I think as guys, sometimes we put too much emphasis in, what it looks like to be a husband, what a great marriage is, and we really look at all that when the reality is we should be building a friendship and relationship with our spouse. The rest of that stuff will happen.
Yeah. True. And so what would you say, Matt, to a guy that's listening to this right now that's going, oh, crap. He's back on his heels, so to speak. He's made some of those mistakes that, you and I have probably already made. And he hasn't been investing, and he's been compromising the whole time. What would you say to him?
Be vulnerable.
What does that mean?
I think it's a little different according to what your situation. For me, it was going home and being honest and saying, hey, I've been looking at things like this, but I now see that I was wrong. And I should have been doing things this way. I should have treated you different. I should have reacted differently when you've been doing this or that. And you'd be surprised when you do that, how much vulnerability will come back from them. And sometimes it's not immediately. Sometimes it takes a day or a week or two of seeing that, but and how much they will come back and begin to take ownership of their flaws as well. Right. So I think being vulnerable, number one, is admitting your flaws to them. For many men's wives, they will fall over when you admit your flaws, right? And ask them what you can do to be better, and explain to them that you want to be better and you want to have the right kind of relationship. And it's just a matter of opening up, which men see as weak, which is actually, as we talked about in the last podcast, it's powerful, And if you really, really, really want to have intimacy, true intimacy with your wife, be vulnerable. You want to have great sex, be vulnerable. You want to have, it's the key, and took me, somewhere in the 20-year range to even start figuring that out.
Yeah.
But I believe that is the absolute key to marriage is being grateful for basically picking out the good things in your spouse and really focusing on them and being vulnerable.
I love it. And what's funny here, Matt, is I have the opportunity, obviously, coaching men for so long. My wife coaches women. One of the things she says is, she's like, we already know, but when you guys come clean to us, there's nothing sexier.
Yeah.
There's just nothing sexier. And then, like you said, she opens up, and if you guys want to have a good night, it's by far the best way of doing it. You have a clean slate. It's a different energy between you guys, right?
Yeah. Good night, morning.
Yep.
You'd be surprised how vulnerability, how attractive it makes us to our wives when we open up.
Yeah. And you imagine that, you think about it, guys, listening to this, when you talk about vulnerability, again, most men, and I did, you think about weakness, right? We think about we're just going to conquer, and et cetera. But when I look back at the men that I really respected, they were super powerful while being vulnerable because they weren't scared. They weren't operating out of fear. When you come to the table with vulnerability, you're basically saying, I'm here, I'm standing here in front of you, and maybe I'm scared, but I'm willing to do it anyway. Right? Here I am. You can hit me, you can cut me, you can stab me, whatever. I'm still here, and I'm going to be standing here afterwards.
Yep.
Transparency, yeah. That's also power. Like we said, that's true power when you can do that from a place of authenticity. There's a lot of people try to fake it, but when you can do it from a place of authenticity, that's when people just can tell. right?
It's also super powerful in the workplace, I've found.
Yep.
Just kind of as, we think at work that, vulnerability would be weak as the CEO or my case chairman now. Like, I've found that just being transparent, vulnerable is also a great place of power at work as well.
Yeah. Speaking of work, I had a conversation yesterday with a woman who was named one of the top 100 most powerful women in Canada, right? Sounds pretty cool anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the conversation, I was like, yeah, I got a 6-month-old. I'm just exhausted. And I was just telling her, like, she asked how you're doing. She was very formal. And immediately when I shared what was really going on for me and not tried to be, professional Doug, she opened up and she's like, you know how refreshing this is? She's like, I got my 12-year-old daughter here. We had a conversation that was real, right? And
Yeah.
we were able to connect, and business will come out of that, of course, but it really is connecting with somebody else on a very real basis.
Mm-hmm.
She's got to tie her shoes same way I do, etc.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we put everybody on this pedestal, of what we need to make sure they think of us as this way, right? And a little bit of that comes into imposter syndrome, right? Because what happens if they find out I'm not as smart as they think I am, right?
Yeah, been there. I've had the imposter syndrome.
Oh, everybody has it, deals with it, right? And that's a big part of the alpha reset is we have a system of knocking that out quickly.
Yep.
And getting through that. But that imposter syndrome also happens at home, right? What if they realize I'm just a big friggin' kid?
Right.
I'm just that 16-year-old guy that just got older, right?
Yeah.
What if they?
The bad thing is that 16-year-old guy that you're trying to hide from them is probably really who they're wanting to see.
100%. 100%, right?
Right.
I had a call with a guy before we did this, Matt, and one of the questions I asked him is a question I ask guys a lot, especially when they're down. It's like, when's the last time you did something fun just for yourself? Just something fun you wanted to do. And he said, hold on, let me get my journal here real quick. And I said, no, you just answered my question, right? It's exactly. You haven't done it because you put yourself last for so long. But the younger version of you, did you have fun? Oh, yeah, all the time. Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And we get away from that because society, it's not guys' fault, but society in so many ways says, you have to be this way, right? Work your tail off, work hard. Then when you're in your 60s or 70s, you can retire and have fun.
Yeah. Always trying to get somewhere and get something. And the reality is all we have to do is receive it.
Yep. I remember your alpha reset, somebody, I think it was Tim, said to you, like, what if everything you wanted was trying to catch you, but you're moving so fast that you're running away from it? If you just stopped and let it catch up to you, it'd be that.
I've done that. I stopped and it caught up. Yeah. Life is abundant.
It truly is. And
it is.
But it takes some paradigm shifts, right? So it doesn't mean it's easy. It just means life's there and abundant. It takes a paradigm shift to recognize it.
Simple but difficult.
Well said. Simple but difficult. So, Matt, I know we can keep going, and I would love to, but I also want to wrap this up and leave the guys with what are 3 things or so these guys could do today, right? And I always say, in a moment of action or in the moment of insight, take action immediately. So that's you guys listening to this. Stop what you're doing. Or if you can't stop what you're doing, don't go on to another podcast or something, but take some notes and put it in your calendar, some action steps. What are a couple things, maybe 3 or whatever, that these guys can do, Matt?
In their relationships?
Yeah, what could they do right now in their relationship or to get out of the rut they're in?
Yeah. Kind of a little bit of a repeat from earlier. I think for the ones that have kids is set strong, loving boundaries. Hadn't already done that. That it'll make your kids feel loved. And that's something that has to happen over time, but you can start it today, obviously. Younger the kids are, the easier it is. So if any of you have young kids, feel blessed when they're teenagers. In our relationships, I think it's be the man that takes that step toward your wife, even if she's stepping away from you, right? So show her love, even if you feel disrespected today, and then again tomorrow, and again the next day, and eventually, be vulnerable in that. And I believe that eventually, she will do the same. You both fell in love and got married for a reason at some point in time. And you made an oath, and I believe that we should do our best to uphold that oath. There's always times when that's not possible, but if you're not to that point, just try being the man and stepping up and doing stepping towards her, even if she's stepping away from you, whatever that means to in your relationship. And then gosh, that's really the ones I have for in the relationship. But on the term of vulnerability, just try to apply it everywhere in your life. Your relationship with your kids, your relationships with your coworkers, your wife, family, mom, dad, friends. You'll find that vulnerability will change most every relationship in your life for the good.
Well said. Well said. Well, guys, you heard it straight from the man himself. Matt Jennings, thank you so much for being here as always. Really appreciate your time, man. And it's just been great having you here.
It's been fun.
Guys, take action now on what Matt says and go after it right away. And as always, go over to thepowerfulman.com/bonus if you'd like to get a free training right there if you haven't. And we change those trainings out regularly for you. So guys, one more thing. If you haven't heard the Matt Jennings introductory podcast, go back now and listen to that one as well. Matt just shares tons of knowledge as always there. And Matt, I hope we can have you back on again soon.
Anytime. Another great step would be join the Powerful Man. If you're in the rut, it's a process that takes a little bit of time, and you guys have a phenomenal program that takes you through that process. So I would recommend anyone feeling alone on an island. I'm trying to think of how I felt alone on an island, kind of depressed, unhappy. No matter what seemed to go right, it wasn't enough, so to speak, in my life. If you have those kinds of things going on in your life, I'd highly recommend they join the group.
All right. Well, unasked for endorsement.
Get in there, you work it. Yeah, when you get in there, you work it.
You got to work it. You got to play full out, right?
Right. That's got to be your part of it. Go full out.
Absolutely. Well, all right, guys. Have an amazing day, and we'll see you next time on The Powerful Man.